Hey, oh, where everybody's here, we have a quorum, we have, um. Two participants by Zoom, three?
Well, it's, yeah.
Oh, yes, that's right, thanks. Thank you all for being here, as we start, and anyone have any, input for approval of the prior minutes? I was out at that meeting.
Yeah, the prior minutes consist of approving the minutes of the prior meeting. That was all that was taken.
Okay. So. So I still not hearing from anybody, everybody is, approving the minutes of the July 25th.
I'm
Jeff, do
consenting
you
with
need
the
a
nod.
motion to take a vote on that, or
Yes,
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the prior meeting as provided prior to the meeting to the members.
I second the motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The roll call,
No,
okay,
it's a parent.
all right, and I abstain. For our next agenda item, I'd like to, it would be a long discussion, and, I'd like to hear from everybody sort of input in regards to the, commercial disposal fees. You know, so, cause we haven't met and talked about this as a group since the selectmen board, met and, you know, and they had all the, pushback from, you know, the large increase and what I would describe as sort of some unintended consequences of, you know, I just thought that we start and get some maybe discussion and some feedback in regards to, you know, what happened there with the selectmen and, you know, the communities, pointing out, you know, the difficulties of such a large increase, all at once to, the private haulers. So it is, I want to apologize. I think, you know, I was asleep at the wheel a little bit, an oversight in thinking about, you know, how a change like this could have affected, you know, the smaller haulers and what impact that would have had on our citizens. So, you know, I think we nonchalantly just voted how we consistently vote. And we look at how, you know, the market is, what the communities around us are, and we always try to stay, pretty consistent with that. You know, we don't want to be, you know, we don't want to be higher, we don't want to be lower, too much lower. And, you know, over a period of time, things around us decrease. So, you know, we just caught up with the market. And that was an easy decision for us until we thought about, but you know, and we were enlightened how it would affect, you know, the citizens who use the private haulers and the private haulers explaining to us what an increase like that would be for them. So, we're likely to have a lot of feedback. And I'm sure, I don't know if you read what was presented in July before the selectmen's meeting. And was that August?
Most of the feedback came at their second session when they were going to vote the rates.
So that was,
It was fairly quiet on the first night.
okay. So that was August, what?
Select board meeting of July 25th was public hearing. And they got the feedback from the public prior to their meeting of August 15th.
Okay, so. So we haven't really talked, but they got an overwhelming response from, you know, the private haulers explained to their customers, you know, what an increase like that would be, you know, to them, preparing them for that. So we have so they let the selectmen know how they felt about that. Certainly, I think one of the things in looking at the feedback, And even, you know, what my impression back then was, you know, if, you know, if you don't, increase these fees, I mean, that's money on the table. Right, that we're leaving there, right, because we're not collecting it from the haulers, and even the larger haulers who are out of town. And that all just increases the tax base. So it's like when people say, please, it's too much, please don't increase the fees, well, they're gonna get it anyway. They're just gonna get it a different way. So that's the things we have to take into consideration when it comes up to finding some solutions here, because it's not just you know, the people that we have to represent who are using the private haulers, but it's
Yeah. Jeff, would it like, and I'm just trying to think outside the box, and I certainly, I did read the comments. It's clear to me. How hard would it be for us to draw a line in the sand by simply issuing hauling permits or permissions to residents of the town? So let's say I have, I don't know, water damage in my basement and I need all of my rug and my carpet ripped out and hauled away. I could in turn go to the town hall, get a sticker or a pass or something. When the hauler comes to my house, I hand them that. And if the hauler has one of those passes on them, they get a different fare. And if the hauler doesn't have that pass on them, they get a higher fare. And I, as I'm saying this, and I'm just spitballing, right? Because we do want to have a discussion around this. I don't want it to be cumbersome, but there has to be an easier way to delineate between the residents that are benefiting from it versus those who are basically dumping on us.
I don't know. I don't quite see it that way. I from the comments that what I gleaned from the comments was that, you know, even just the regular week to week service that these local haulers are providing are going to be impacted by the rate by, you know, I don't know what numbers the haulers were throwing out there, but I saw in one of the comments they had suggested, you know, $2 or $3 a week, and over the course of the year, that's a, you know, $150 increase per collection that they're doing for each household that they're servicing. And I think that was the impetus that you know, drove a lot of the comments that is what they're asking us to address. So
okay, and maybe the distinction is between the, you know, two guys in a truck or junk haulers or we take it away or those folks versus the ones that are actually operating waste removal with bins. I guess I'm just thinking that there's got to be a tiered mechanism so that, and I don't want to make it punitive, but there are certainly people using the service that are bringing stuff from other towns because we know that we're underpriced relative to the other towns.
Yeah.
I think the next part of the discussion, I think, you know, our director, department, they're gonna have some proposals, you know, we might have some things to choose from. So I wanted to just sort of process, you know, the results of the last meeting and how, I mean, I am, before we jump into those kind of solutions and the proposals, and we give the feedback, and I thank you for, Jeffrey, for thinking, you know, quickly out of the box and trying to find some solutions. You know, I think, looking back, I am still strongly feel that we need to be at market value. You know, we can't be lower than all the surrounding towns in us. And that's money on the table. I think we have a fiscal responsibility to get that money and save it from our, you know, our tax base as well, so.
Jeff, can I ask for clarification on that?
Yeah.
Is the RTS running at a deficit so that if we don't increase this fee, we will be necessarily requiring additional funds from the tax levy? Or is this is this being driven by, fairness in the market with surrounding towns?
Yeah.
It's a combination. One, part of the reason the RTS enterprise was dissolved and brought back into the operating budget was that about 2/3 of the operation is subsidized by the tax levy. And the other third is supported by fees. So where we haven't increased fees for several years, but the cost of processing and disposing has increased year over year. By default, that means more is being pushed onto the tax levy. The other factor, of course, is that we don't want our fees to be disproportionately low compared to the other communities. Because some of these costs, such as disposal, could end up costing us more money. And hence, again, going back onto the tax levy of the taxpayers, where companies are doing cost avoidance from the other places they could dump better.
Okay, thank you.
Wells, you have any input?
It sounded like we were going to get some proposals. I mean, to me, I agree that we should be at the same rate as the other towns. And so then the question is maybe the question is, how do we do it over a longer time period? But yeah, looking forward to hearing the proposal.
And the only other thing that I would throw out there that I think everybody should think about is how do we know that when we go to renegotiate at some point, I know it's further out, right? How do we make sure that we have some level of cushion so that the surprise to the taxpayers isn't large when we go to renegotiate?
Well, theoretically, we're going to renegotiate with like a year or two in advance of when it's actually going to go into play. So there'll be at least some time to adjust if we need to adjust.
Correct. I guess when I say future proof, I'm talking about, wouldn't it be nice to have some reserves maybe?
Yeah, I think this would be a good segue.
Okay. Yes, I think it would be a good time. David, do you have any input at all?
I assume what's being reacted to here basically is the tipping fee going to $200 per ton. Is that what?
Yes.
That's what's really driving.
Yeah, so that increases the cost to the private haulers, at this percentage, that high percentage. So passing on their costs to their customers. That's why the customers are complaining that their weekly fees are gonna go up.
Right, and we voted on this and
The select board, so the select board is getting a lot of feedback from the town, did not accept our recommendations for the increase in fee and asked us if we would come up with a solution that isn't such a quick impact to the citizens. Okay.
but in a sense, they asked us for this, right? Who proposed the $200 a ton to begin with?
Well,
That came from the staff. Yeah, that was the RTS and finance, DBW finance. We
Right.
collectively saw a need for
this is
this.
the leadership of Needham, okay, and put together, recognizing that there was money under, and then also we had while the fees without our attention ended up being much lower than the surrounding towns. they started to attract a lot of, out of town haulers, okay? So they were also getting an advantage, as well, so that's. So before,
Yeah,
I
but
just,
when I voted on this, I didn't think that that was really unreasonable.
I don't think.
I don't think any of us thought it was unreasonable. I think that that was a big surprise.
I agree with you, David, I don't think it's unreasonable either.
I mean, maybe. Maybe it would be better to phase it in over some.
That's the way,
I
that's,
don't know, I mean, I don't know what else.
that's our next
I
phase.
don't know what else to.
That's our next phase to talk about. I have one question before we go into the proposal. Is it legal for us to charge, Needham companies less than, outside companies?
Yes, because you can take into account that some part of the cost is being paid by the tax levy, hence the entities that are in Needham, hence paying taxes. You can have an in-town rate versus an out-of-town rate.
Okay, I'm glad that's a possibility, and I'd like to hear the
Yeah.
proposals, and if that's one of the things that's included, I would be in support of that.
So I would say all of our proposals start the exact same, and it's really the phased in increase that changes. So we have been looking at actually keeping the $200 for most commercial entities, but commercial haulers that have a route in Needham we would look at charging them 180, we'd go up to 180. And then year by year, this is where we had a couple of options, either increase by $10 a year, 10% a year, or based on the increase that we are seeing as the tipping fee.
Can I just like give a
Yeah.
little, I'm gonna give a little background, I think. To our lack of foresight, we had not looked at the rates in over 10 years. And part of that was because when we renegotiated the Wheelabrator contract, we saw such a significantly lower tipping fee as part of that. That we didn't look at, we looked at our cost side of it, we didn't look at the market demand side of it. And we still have a really nice contract for the next couple of years. So we didn't really look around to
I
neighboring
think
communities.
there are a lot of factors, that came into play, from everything from, that as well as the change in leadership as well. COVID, I think had a great impact,
Absolutely.
right?
So we didn't make
And
increases
the
for,
committee didn't meet as much as well, so there's.
so I think we have like, so I think. It seems reasonable to me that people are responding to not having a rate change in 10 years, and I think we've talked about operationalizing it, so that way we're reviewing the rates every year and readjusting them every year, so they're not getting hit with. 10 years worth of increases in one time, but I think we had looked at. The response we got back was from people who had Needham-based haulers who sort of did that old traditional backdoor service. And they didn't want to transition, or they like that service. So I think what Matt and Cecilia had looked at was, could we find a way that those 3 or 4 companies that are left in Needham?
There's 4 in town that are very specifically devoted to household collection. And we know who those people are. They're self-identifying, and we identify them as their loads. As household collections, week to week, they offer recycling and trash. And our proposal is to create a rate that identifies that load and charge that load at 180, so it would be an increase. And that's 180 per ton over the scale. But we also have people, and sometimes they're the same companies, who will do cleanouts. Those have a lot more impact on the operation, more impact on the building, the wear and tear, on the equipment, on the trailers, the tarps. Take more time from the staff. So we would create a stream that we're currently calling commercial residential waste. That's gonna be 200 a ton. And that's level funded with neighboring communities. And by level funding it, we are gonna make it less desirable for someone to do a collection in Needham and then add that one in Waltham to it and bring it back to Needham for a tip. So that level funds us, and actually on the low end, level funds us with our neighbors. And the 180 a ton gives the haulers who are offering the service to Needham residents a break. It's an increase. It's not gonna be the $2 to $3, maybe it's the $2. It is gonna be an increase on their, household collection, but I think we're gonna be seeing that. I think we're gonna be seeing that throughout trash. and trash processing, trash collection, and I think we collectively need to do a better job, as Kara said, of analyzing those costs regularly and having the increases kind of built into our yearly management of the process. To Jeff's point, we want to make sure that we're offering a very affordable level funded service for that, but recognition to, Jeff Heller on screen, that we are gonna see an increase when these are renegotiated, and we might not see stability in that. They might only offer us a 5-year contract. I think right now we're on a 20-year contract, and it's unbelievably stable, it feels that way to me. When we go to a 5-year contract, we might not know what that next 5 years is gonna be. And as trash processes start changing regionally and nationally, that's where there might be some volatility. So this is also a good opportunity, I think, to get out into the community and have the community hear that there may be some trash costs that are gonna affect.
In progress.
That could affect, that just could affect, Needham taxpayers as well as, Massachusetts taxpayers. And this is, I think this is an opportunity for people to hear that. And further discussions.
And I think that this is an excellent opportunity to drive compliance, and I use compliance with a small c around recycling, for example. I mean, this should be our wake-up call to a whole bunch of people that, I mean, we the other day I had a bag and we had this discussion, right? You tore open a bag and the level of compliance was 0. The trash bag, and I'm sure that there's residents that say, well, I bought the trash bag, so I can throw whatever I want to away in the trash bag. I think we need to seize this moment to start educating. Because it is clear to me that there's a lot of people that just could give two balonies.
Well, the yellow bag system is designed to drive recycling. So realistically, one of the reasons there's a cost associated with it is that people see value in recycling and cost in trash, even if it's minimal. And I mean, if that delta between the trash and the recycling grows a little bit, maybe the impetus to recycle grows a little bit. We offer almost every opportunity for residents to recycle pretty much whatever they have from their household.
Yeah, but you recall that we were standing there.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You're asking something, okay? The yellow bags are designed, pay per throw to incentivize recycling, right? Now, towns are incentivized to comply with recycling by the DEP, but they get spot checked and have a minimum to comply with, or they get fined, right? But does that kind of regulation and compliance pass down to residents? Are they, if they're choosing not to, to recycle at all, and 50% of their trash is recyclables, are they subject to compliance and a fine, or is it like the person said? It's, my liberty is I bought the bag and I can put whatever I can while I want in it. And if I want to put all my recyclables in my yellow bag, and I don't want to put it in that bin, I can. Is that?
I can't enforce it. If it's in a yellow bag, I can comment on it without, but I have no mechanism to
So Jeff,
find somebody.
Yeah.
it's all we can do is educate and maybe impose some guilt. If that's what you want to call it, if that's the only penalty legally that the town can impose for someone not complying.
So I would say, I think what I'm hearing is that for some people, the cost of the yellow bag is not enough of an incentive to recycle. I think what we've talked about and we've talked about with the committee is that we know that things are going to get more expensive when it comes to waste. And that will have a trickle down effect to not just the tipping fee, which will probably go up once those new contracts go in place, that this is really accounting for our existing and not so much, 5 or 10 years from now. But the same thing will then happen with the trash market as well, as we try to offset the cost of trash removal through the yellow bag process. And that may drive the price up enough for more people to comply.
So that's future discussions. For today's discussion, now, you said you have several proposals. They, right, on timing, but they all include
Can I-
the.
Can I just pose one more question, because this is something that's been on my mind? Are we enforcing the trash haulers? Are they truly recycling? Because I see them go up and down my street, and I sometimes wonder if they're putting it all in the same side of the truck, if they're really truly segregating stuff. I just have a big question mark around that.
Are you talking about curbside pickup or backdoor
Yeah.
pickup?
No, the curbside.
So the curbside doesn't come to Needham?
Well, some of them.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about the private,
The
yeah,
Oracle,
Yeah.
Republic, Orifice, sorry.
yeah.
Those have their own facilities, so we don't validate, I guess I would say, their single stream recycling. But the backdoor haulers, we could certainly talk to.
They do, I know personally that they do, Dalton Disposal, Needham Recycling. The two that use single stream and pay for single stream are JT Trash, formerly Timmerman. And the junk removers, they both pay a fee to dispose of their, single stream. And they do put it into one truck, but I've watched them hand unload it, and they do. So I know the ones that come into, our facility recycled. But there's only 4 haulers that are currently bringing their household collections into the transfer station.
Okay, so the question what I was asking, all your proposals will include the I guess the staggered payment for local, okay? So why don't we just talk about, did anyone have any discussion, questions about that? And is in support of that tiered proposal?
Jeff,
then we
can
can
we
go-
hear what if there are gonna be multiple options, can we hear all the options before we open it up for discussion? Just so
So I
we,
was saying that part of it, this part of it of the tiered payment is consistent for all 3, or how many proposals?
Well, so I think there's 2 things we're talking about. One would be separating the 2 streams. So they're priced differently. So the we're gonna call it private hauler waste, that's already set up in our scale system. And we're gonna change that rate. It currently bills at the same scale rate as another rate that's called commercial residential waste. We're gonna separate that rate. The private hauler waste, which is the people who go to the households and the back doors, that rate is gonna have a fee. Our proposal is 180, going up from 140 to 180. And then the commercial residential waste, which is all the bulky waste, cleanups and collections, is gonna go from 140 to 200. And there's different motivations for each of those, and I can explain each one separately if that helps, or you can hear Cecilia's got some rate proposals that are beyond that initial proposal. Or if you wanna propose a different rate.
Yeah.
Fee, we can
So
hear that.
the
I was
only
just trying to
difference-
simplify it before we get to the timing kind of discussion. Just all the proposals are consistent with that tiered payment of 140 to 180 and the for the weekly residential. All right, so are we in support of that? Anyone have some questions or concerns about that? Because that would then we would go on and hear the proposals around how we implement that tiered payment.
yeah,
Okay,
I am in support of separating the 2 fees into 2 different categories. I'm just not convinced yet on the what those final numbers we should recommend and how we get there. But in the concept, I fully agree with.
I have a question about the concept in general. And the question is, how much additional operational complexity does it add for you guys to try and figure out who's who?
Well, so day to day, the most consistent loads are the household collection people. And we know who they are, we know what their loads look like. When it tips, it's bags, it's generally, very much like what you'd put to the curb in a barrel. It may have one or two items like a small carpet or something like that, but it's very distinct. Where a load over the scale that's a clean out is gonna be furniture, chairs, coffee tables, a sofa, wood. We get a lot of like demos of sheds. Those look very different. We're gonna speak very directly, and we have been speaking very directly to the household route people, that if there's any mixing of their household collection with something that we identify as a clean out, they're gonna get billed at that clean out rate, which is higher. They're very methodical. They always pick up on Thursdays. If they do the west side of town on Thursdays, they're gonna do the east side of town on Wednesdays. And we know when they come in, they usually come in, like if the truck is small, they're gonna start their route at 7 in the morning. It's gonna be in for the first dump between 9:30 and 10, and then it's gonna do a dump at 11:30. And possibly if they're behind schedule, they're gonna come in for a dump at 1. We know that truck will do 2 to 3 loads. We know almost always when they're gonna come in, so that's fairly easy for us to kind of regulate. And we're gonna speak directly to the haulers. We also see into the building where that truck tips. So we see the load after it tips and a truck drives out. If we have any doubts, we're gonna address it fairly immediately. That part is easy for us to kind of police and regulate. The thing that's hard to regulate is where the clean out loads come from, because we, the Board of Health asks all of those weekly collectors to, kind of provide, assurances about their truck and that it's a sound truck and it's not gonna leak material. They also get like customer lists. That sort of helps us know that almost, I would be convinced that 99% of those customers are within the borders of Needham taxpayers. So that's not a concern to me, but a bulky load, I can't track that. I really can't. Even if you gave me 2 extra personnel to work in the office, I can't tell where stuff is. That's why raising that fee to a higher fee just to discourage other communities' bulky loads coming into Needham, that's the motivation on that second rate going from 140 to 200.
So I think the answer to my question is minimal operational complexity added, right?
Yeah, we can handle it. Yes, I'm convinced that the staff will be able to handle it with very, very little extra effort. Unless we get more haulers. Right now, the 4 haulers we work with and we know them very well.
Do the 4 haulers that we use now, or that go to the RTS now, do they do much service for out of town residents? Like if it was one of our regular haulers, but they did a clean out for an out of town resident, would you have any way to figure that out?
But they'd have to pay the clean out rate. So that same truck, if it came in with a load that wasn't household trash, they would have to pay the clean out rate.
Okay.
But no, I wouldn't be able to tell.
Yeah, so I'm in favor as well of the tiered fee.
Hey, David, you understand that you support the tiered method of implementation of the fees for local versus.
Yeah, the only thing I might suggest is doing like a phase in of the.
We're gonna get to that discussion. Right now, we're just talking about the
The idea.
the structure of the tiered
Yeah.
amount. Okay? All right,
And the other point, maybe it's obvious, but I don't think that no matter what happens, we ought to leave the amounts where they are.
Okay.
Because I think that is I think you really want to prepare the town people for what's coming, and what's coming is definitely, the rates are not gonna go down, let's put it that way. So, I mean, I think it'd be a really bad idea to sort of say, okay, we got all this negative publicity here, so we leave it at 140, that's not, I don't think that's, maybe everybody knows that already, but that's not.
Bill, you raised a question that you, maybe, you support, you said you support the tier, but you're not sure about, the level of fees. You want to, ask the questions around specifics of that, and is there another figure that you're, thinking, or you want to, and I would, I guess everybody should weigh in on that opinion that you proposed.
Yeah, so what I was thinking was, I mean, my takeaway from a lot of the comments was that people are not opposed to a fee increase. They're just opposed to a large fee increase right away. I mean, there are some people that were opposed to any increase, but the majority realize that, fees are going up, costs are going up but they were taken aback by the size of the increase. And even with the proposed tier that you have there, it's still a 20% increase on the household rate, and it's still the 40% increase on the commercial rate. And so I just wanted to reserve opinion until I heard what the proposals were. And I think you're still going to get a lot of pushback and negative perception with a 20% rate increase. But if that 20% is over 2 years or 3 years, then maybe that is one way to do it. And I don't know if that's one of the proposals from the group. So I just didn't want to lock into something at a 20% rate right now until I heard what the options might be.
And I'll add also, I think, like Bill was saying, people weren't necessarily opposed to the total amount. What we're talking about is bringing this up to the market rate for what towns are paying, even for their private haulers, right? So in my mind, I think, given all of these future costs that are coming, we should get to the market rate for our town, which is 200, but over a period of 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, whatever the number of years is, right? So that it's slower, but we get there. And then maybe we charge a premium for people outside the town. And it's not a big premium per se, but maybe it's 210, maybe it's 220. So that way, we're market rate for what we're doing, that our town is paying what every other town is paying for our own trash. So that's something that I was thinking.
Yeah, I would throw out there to everybody that if we pull this off in 4 or 6 years, we're going to be looking at an even bigger number. So we might as well start inflation adjusting whatever the figure is, because prices are only going in one direction for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and then I think we're talking right now about just a certain type, right? But we should also consider the yellow bags. And so that can be a separate discussion, but we should be considering very small increases. So I don't know what, I think it's like $10 and what is it, $10.75 right now for the big ones?
For the little ones.
So
big ones are $2 each.
oh, right. Sorry. The big ones are $20 and the little ones are $10.75, right?
And we raise the rates on the bag more regularly than the 10 years.
Yes, we have.
But there's only been, I think, only one rate increase on the yellow bag since I've been here. The yellow bags went from maybe 10 to 10.75.
And they were at 185 to $2 for the large.
But when was the last increase?
Oh,
Yeah, so before COVID, the bags last increase the large bags was in 2018 and the small bags was in 2016.
Right. So that's a long time. Like it theoretically, to really make this minimal and just get people used to it, they should be tiny increases, just tiny increases, but every year, rather than a big increase every.
I think we heard that as well. That's one of the solutions to now this feedback from the town
Right. So I'm just saying, in addition to thinking about this, once we're done with this one, we should be starting to discuss that for the yellow
we
bags.
review annually, right, what it said, right? So, that was one solution, so. I thank you for your questions, and your input, Bill, as well. I'm in support of long-term with the two-tiered method, of private, because, people who do, use, private haulers also still pay some in taxes. So I think it is also fair and consistent, maybe charge them, a lower tier, for those weekly haulers, and like that. And then, and when we increase, we just increase the tiers as well, like that, all right? I'm open for the discussion that you raised, Bill, about, how quickly we get up to that, 180, if we're gonna, if there's some proposals that we can discuss now, whether or not that is.
Mr. Chair, they actually do have a proposal that phases in.
So why don't we hear the proposal, 3 proposals, like,
But all of our proposals have the the next increase going to 180 and 200.
Yeah, so that's-
yes, yes.
It's phased continuing on past that, but there's no phasing to 180.
Do you have the ratio of the rate of the percentage of tonnage that we get from those 4 haulers as it compares to the rest? So we can just see what the percentage is of the total volume?
Do I have a percentage?
I think
of what?
Cecilia does, she's looking around over there. How much tonnage do those 4 haulers bring into the RTS versus all the other commercial?
But private hauler.
Not just those 4, these have commercial versus residential.
Gotcha.
We
Yeah.
could do those stickers that we identified over the last year and get you that. I mean, their tonnage isn't gonna be that high
For those 4
for
haulers.
those 4 haulers. Plus, I mean, if someone's charged a house a weekly rate, the tipping fee only represents some of that. The hauler is charging gas, for personnel, for their truck, for their office work. So the tipping fee is a percentage of that weekly rate. So, I mean, I think $2 a week increase is probably accurate, and I think most medium residents, $2.
So if we wanted to see proposals phasing up to the 180 and 200, that's something we could bring back.
So my one question, this is what I'm hearing, so I wanna make sure I'm hearing correctly. It seems like the 200 for the commercial entities who are not these 4 haulers who do weekly pickup in Needham. Does that seem like a reasonable to stay with that group, and we're really looking at those 4 haulers, just based on the feedback that we've received from the residents? It seemed like those were the 4 that were problematic, and it wasn't like a general, you can't, we're worried about the general rates, right? So I just wanna make sure we go back and focus on it. Are we just looking at the 4 haulers that we have and what rate and phasing plan we think is reasonable for them? Are we looking at both?
I'm in support of, with the 200, all the way through, let's hear from everybody.
I think I would like to propose,
Are you support of the 200, just for right now, the question on the floor is, are you support of the 200 for increase for, not the out of town haulers, and also for the clean out,
not immediately, because I think that
but ultimately,
Yeah.
let's talk, ultimately, you're in support of that, getting to
ultimately,
that. That's the question on the floor, ultimately, are you in support of that fee?
Yes.
Okay. Bill?
I would like to personally, I would like to see.
Wells here,
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I would like to see what some of the, the actual numbers are for the towns that are around us. To see if they, vary. I know we picked 200 because we thought that was about the market rate, but I would actually love to see the specific numbers. Because again, for those out of town folks, I could see that number being high. I could see that. I could see that number being higher. Than 200.
You had those numbers presented to you when you first voted on this.
You saw that.
All right, you saw those numbers and you.
Yeah, I don't have a photographic memory, and
I know that, but I'm just
so
saying.
I think so. I think basically, what we're saying now, right? That number 200 was for the town of Needham at that time. That was what I was thinking, right? But now we're talking about people that might be out of town. So that makes me want to be more, sort of review those numbers again to make sure that, like, from my perspective, we should be at least in the middle for those out of town folks, if not on the high end of the middle, right?
Yeah. This
You
is
know-
a bit random, but I think it adds up. Are these private haulers? They pay by check, I hope, right? They're not paying with a credit card?
They do pay, everyone, we rarely get checks, I think some of them who pay on accounts like Timmerman pay monthly with a check, but the rest of them are paying mostly at the time of dropping the loads with a credit card.
And just remind me again, is it like 3.5%, 3 point something?
The charge?
You know,
It
Yeah.
varies. It depends on the card carrier.
Just interesting little factoid, right? $200 if it's 3%, it's $6 right there.
Understood.
Is
I'm in
it the
favor-
point that they're
I'm in
willing
favor
to
of
pay
the-
$6 for the convenience of the credit card?
Yeah, but I mean, we're
Hey, this
talking
is-
$200 relative to $6, and I would argue that I don't know. Everywhere that I'm going right now has a discount for paying cash or check. So I don't want to build complexity into anybody's job here. I don't want to make anything harder, but we're counting pennies, right? And that's $6 per ton.
The, just clarification, he's talking down nets less than $200. Because we're, having a discount.
that fee.
We're paying that fee, correct. It's just the contract that we have. Remember, we accept payments for different types of things. And I think everybody knows that you go to a retailer, those are given discounts. It's across the board. We can't turn around and have one way, it's against the contract with the credit card company. We can't say, well, if you charge your trash, we're gonna charge you a fee, but if you pay your excise tax, we're not gonna charge you a fee. And if you pay for your pool pass, we'll give you a discount. So it has to be the same, and that's accommodating many different boards, many different departments. So it's a long way of saying it's much more complex.
No, I agree. I'm tugging on little pieces of wool, if you will, because I certainly think that the one thing that we all need to be able to do is find creative ways of dealing with the issues that we're dealing with. I was quite taken back by the reaction. I can't say that enough.
You know, Wellesley and what's the highest another town charges, and what's the lowest another
So
town charges?
Wellesley has a fee that they start for like any unsorted load, which would be anything mixed. And that additional fee is like a $200 handling fee, and then their rate is $165 on top of that. So, almost every load that comes in there has that initial fee, which is a $200 sort of minimal base. But their fee is $165, and then, looking here, it's, Marshfield is $200, Hyde Park over at James Grant is $200. The old EL Harvey, which is now Waste Connection, is listed here at $230 a ton. With a $230 minimums, there's no scale minimum. Situate is $300, Hingham is $320, Cohasset is $400. Dennis down the Cape is 225, Yarmouth is 170.
What's Newton?
Newton doesn't really have a drop-off facility, so they've got
Okay.
they've got Rumford Ave, but you have to be a Needham resident, and I think they just do items. Actually, Shane, any comment on?
Newton is curbside and they don't take bulk.
Okay. How about Dedham? Does Dedham have it?
They also do not.
Yeah, they call us all the time looking to dump stuff, and if you guys wanna generate revenue, then you just say, out of town rate is 400 a ton, and just let them come. You know, and
And then we'll need a few more staff.
well,
to
what
manage
we
the
could pay
loads.
for it, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The people.
So I'm hearing Wellesley, at least our next door neighbor, right, is significantly higher than we are.
Yeah.
Like a lot higher, like double.
Model, and they have more staff over there, they're doing something different than we are.
Out of these towns.
Yeah, this makes me, it does still make me think that the higher number should maybe.
You just have to-
Higher.
You know, I just don't think they wanna be in the business of doing it, you know, that. The town stuff don't really wanna be handling that.
Well, a lot of these transfer stations are still left on Cape Cod, and there aren't a lot of options there.
Right, in places like the South Shore, do they have curbside and a tipping fee?
I'm not sure, so our scale specialist, Justin, used to work at Situate, and they're at 300 a ton. You know, it's a pretty robust facility there, but, you know, they just didn't really wanna take those kinds of loads, but people would come in and they'd bring in a boat. You know, it's a lot of money to dispose of that, but they would take it.
So Dave, can I ask a question on the finance side of things? We've always used the industrial and commercial rates as a way to kind of offset the rate increases for the yellow bags. We've always looked at it that way sometimes. If we go to a much higher rate, we're gonna have some attrition of people not coming anymore. Would that impact the rates we would have to offset with the yellow bags and indirectly wind up increasing the town residents' costs from that perspective? Do we rely that heavily on the commercial fee for that offset?
Well, we have, and it's one of the reasons why we haven't adjusted the yellow bag rates in several years. But that margin, and I haven't done the analysis recently, because until I get to, which is gonna be next fiscal year, get to looking at the yellow bag rates. It's been several years since I've looked at that analysis, but with the cost of disposal increasing every year, and we have not increased the commercial rate, that margin of surplus is decreased to the point that I truly believe at 140, they're slightly paying a minimum premium over what our actual cost is, which means that we're not really subsidizing the yellow bags at the level that we used to. It has been an increase in the tax levy support of the trash operation.
Okay.
But Bill, I guess another question is, right, I hear you what you're saying. We're concerned we don't want to decrease our outside tonnage too much because that could reduce our revenue overall, right? But so if we were to do 220 or 240, what I'm hearing is that we'd still be the cheapest price around. That's probably where ultimately they're going to say, what's the cheapest place for me to go? And if we raise it to a rate that is a little higher, which might be more in line with what some of those close by towns are charging, but less, theoretically we'd still be the cheapest game in town.
I mean, I think this facility is very desirable, for a number of reasons for commercial haulers. I don't see that we're gonna really see any drop in the tonnage from commercial haulers. We spend a lot of time working on keeping the surfaces free of nails and debris, which is a real impact for these guys at other facilities where they're getting a lot of nails and tires. We're very quick at getting people in and through the system and weighed out and back on their routes. All of those things, plus the low rate, make the facility very desirable. I'm getting calls from a lot of other haulers who work in different towns who want to bring their loads in. So if it were a concern, we could have our volume up at any point.
Okay, that's helpful to know. Thank you.
So I guess, does anybody have thoughts on, and including, the DPW team on a rate that would be a little higher than the 200 for the higher side, like 220 or 240?
We didn't put something like that in. I mean, I just think that this is sort of an initial sort of almost like a realignment in the local communities and, you know, just kind of getting ahead of the increase. We were, you know, maybe a little too ambitious with the first proposal just because it was a large increase. But what we all saw was that it's probably better for us to analyze the costs and to do these rate increases incrementally instead of like waiting and holding on raising the fees until we do one lump sum, and that's what catches people off guard.
I guess my question would be, I know you guys wanna see a tiered phasing up to the 180 as well, but are we looking at tier or phasing the $200 or the 220 increase as well, or are we fine with moving that forward?
Well, that was the question that he had
Yeah.
before.
I got second put together options for both, if you'd like to see both as well.
Can I?
I mean, some of the people that wrote were people that do the cleanouts, right? Some of the people that wrote in. So my thought is that we would want to phase in both.
Well, yeah, well, we're.
I'm wondering,
$200 and get through that and even maybe, you know, and do that. We're gonna be reviewing this annually. When would be the time, what month do you think we would be reviewing these rates every year? Would it be like mid-June?
Well, first, I think the select board is looking for a new proposal because they still see
Yes,
the
I
need
know, I'm
to-
just talking about whatever proposal we agree on now, and fees we agree on now, say if we agree on 200 or we agree on 210, we're gonna be discussing this in less than a year.
So-
Right?
I just need some clarity because I feel like I'm getting some mismessaging. So are you looking at us on the non-town hauler items? Are you looking at us to look at a lower number, a higher number? I'm a little bit.
Higher.
confused by that.
Higher.
higher, yep.
Okay.
We're
Right,
talking higher,
excellent. Okay,
you know, we're thinking this, you know, so.
so it was just me. Thank you.
I would
Again, it's
yeah.
jumping again to quickly, you know, where's the pushback gonna be? And if we are thinking that if we don't increase it beyond $200, we're leaving money on the table. We are gonna review these rates in less than a year, so if we're, you know, we think $200 is not enough. We know in 8 months from now, we're gonna be discussing what's the next increase to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just in light of the pushback that we got, these rates that we came up with were a compromise between sort of the pushback that we received, but also the input from not just you all here tonight, but from also the select board, that there is potential earnings outside for trash coming in from outside. So our proposal was meant to sort of move the issue ahead in a way and get a vote in front of the select board. And also propose that rates would have an adjustment going up starting next July 1st, which is the beginning of next fiscal year. So we vote on tonight, the proposal of 180 for household collections. And then and 200 for cleanouts and bulky items over the scale. And then we'd have a proposal that Cecilia would talk about, that would talk about the increase starting July 1st, and that would be the only two things that we would vote on, or that would be, we propose right now, even though we do have the prices projected all the way into the next contract.
Are you suggesting that what we're
No.
proposing, well,
2028?
Yeah, but the proposals we have don't do what they want.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking, what I'm kind of almost hearing, and not, like, we'll take this back, I think we'll look at the makeup of those 4 haulers versus the regular, and look at what the revenue streams would be. What I'm kind of hearing is that almost, could we do 160 for those haulers and 220 for the outside haulers? That is that.
No, I
generally-
wasn't saying 160. I was saying keep the 180 and increase the outside haulers to 220.
But the outside haulers aren't necessarily all outsiders. They
But-
might be coming to a Needham house to do a
Correct.
shed removal.
Yeah, but.
And they might-
Yeah, this is where I keep on coming back to, there's gotta be an easy way to do that distinction.
But
so-
there really isn't.
No, but if I have an elderly person, if my parents lived in Needham and they passed away, it's a one-time charge that I go down to the town hall and I get some kind of piece of paper, call it a haul slip because I can't come up with a better term. And when that hauler comes to bring that particular cleanup, they hand it over and they get a preferential rate.
But how do I know that that truck that shows up isn't mixing that load with 2 loads from Newton? So they show up and they've got their preferential slip and it's 3 tons of trash. How much of it is
No.
from your parents' house?
There's gotta
No.
be, at least it's a line in the sand. If there's gonna be people that are gonna, not live up to the honor system, whatever you want to. I don't know
No.
how big these trucks are, but
They're
at
big and I
least we
can,
know
and I
that
can-
one of the families benefited.
I've got one hauler in town that's very popular on social media and they're definitely not Needham based. And they have a lot of Needham clients. And so because they don't qualify for a sticker, I asked them to call the station with a sticker that relates to that residential property. And that person calls in and says, this group, which I'm not gonna mention, has a load coming to your facility from our house. And I'd say, okay. And sometimes I ask them to describe what items will be in there. And when that truck shows up from that hauler, it's twice as much as they said it was gonna be in there. It's very difficult to police and it creates conflict and it seems simple,
No, no,
but
no.
it's not.
But I'm suggesting that the policing, I hear what you're saying about what shows up might not be what we sign up for, right? But I think that having an individual go to town hall, have that little inconvenience, if you will, basically sets the standard. I go to town.
So
hall-
I just posted a
anyone have any
potential-
opinions on what Jeffrey is suggesting? He's talking about it's an operational complexity for DPW.
I don't want DPW to have to police it. I honestly, I don't. But I think that somebody going to town hall, going through the step of actually showing up.
I ask other people's opinions. You made a presentation. And I hear everybody else's opinion about what Jeffrey just proposed.
It sounded to me like Matt is saying that operationally, we don't want to get into that. We don't want to open that can of worms, and I would defer to him on that.
I would just add, we don't have an administrative process for that, and we would have to figure out if Brennan would be on town hall staff in order to add that process in.
No.
I did post a proposal that doesn't get into that in the webinar chat, which is that we moved to 150 for internal in 2024. We moved to 190 for external in 2024. So there's a $10 increase next year for internal and a $50 increase next year for external. and then a $10 increase for the next 3 years after that to bring us to our target, at which point we could check annually.
I mean, could we stick to, you know, some of the questions on the floor? I put a question about feedback from Jesse's proposal. You know, well, you're offering something out there that when you said it's on a webinar, I don't know what that means, but it's not a thing. We're having a discussion here. And before.
Yeah,
you
it's
start-
just easier to see it. So I explained it though. I explained it
Why don't
out
we
loud.
get to the
I
place
stated
where
it. I stated
Are you talking over me?
Yes, I was actually, because you've also interrupted me, but yes.
You're making a proposal, but we're trying to get to a point where seeding things out, where we haven't even heard, you know, DPW's 3 proposals to put before us. So before
I think we actually heard what they said they had to give us. And one of the things about that is that it's too large an increase for the first year. And I think some people have also said that that's a pretty large increase to go to 180. And so I think that's what I'm saying, is that if we start off for the internal one, which is the one that it matters for people that have the curbside, which is the vast majority of people they think that responded. If we move that up to 180, but we do it over 4 years, then it's a lot less impactful. And my understanding is that that percentage is a smaller percentage of the tonnage than the tonnage that comes from the house cleanups and the external. So we could bump the external up to 190 for next year. We're getting that money sooner. And then bump them up also $10 a year, each of the 3 years after that, to get them to 220. So in 2027, we'd have met the targets. And then from there, it could be a yearly reassessment process. So that's what I wanted to explain.
I will go again and say that I'm still confused about the general direction. So I thought that we were talking about 220 for fiscal year 24, not 220 as a target. Which again, it's fine, we can run it out, but I just need some clarity on what type of scenarios we're running. And I would say it still proposes the same challenge that we have with particularly external people coming to Needham. If we are still the cheapest this year, we are still gonna have that issue.
For the external vendors, it would be 190.
I still haven't heard Bill's opinion on Jeffrey's suggestion, all right? And then I'm gonna ask that we hear the proposals, all right, that the DPW has said that they want to present. And then we can weigh your proposal, Wells, along with theirs, okay? And I think that otherwise, if we start jumping in and free associating into yours there, where it's getting confusing and we don't even know what we're discussing or voting on. And we have to vote on something tonight to go to the selectmen. And if we don't do it tonight, then we're gonna have to meet in like another 2 weeks to come up with something to get on for the selectmen, because we can't push this out until, you know, next year, right? We're now trying to resolve something that we started in June, okay? So, you know, let's try to get through, you know, stay focused and organized. So, right, we can complete something. So I go back, Bill, and you.
Yep, so my opinion is based on the how the RTS staff was describing the process between just having a simple distinction between, you know, household normal trash and the one-time clean out bulky trash. I would prefer that type of distinction and not have a special rate or sticker for a town resident that has that bulky trash. So as long as we're separating between the regular normal household collection at a lower rate and the higher rate for the bulky collection, I think that it would be fair to have that bulky collection apply, one rate apply to towns residents and non-residents alike, because it's really going to be used for town residents on a one-off special situation. So I don't see the need to distinguish that as much as the other material.
I think we could win some of the opposition that we had from the town residents The reason that I'm bringing up this alternative is that we can offset some of the concern from the town residents that this is how we're gonna incentivize or support the cleanouts that happen locally.
Yep.
That's the only reason that I thought there really has to be a way to delineate. And
You have an opinion?
Yeah, I think it's simpler for the RTS to keep it as it is, and I think that should be the end of the issue, and that's the way I would vote if we're gonna do it.
Can we hear your proposal? Is there any other discussion before we move on to hearing?
Yeah, just just to respond to Jeff there, I think I completely agree with the logic behind it. I just don't know that implementing it with the, you know, the sticker or the tag that you bring to the RTS is going to get us there because of what, you know, the inability to distinguish between whether it's from out of town or from in town, even on the same truck. And if there was if we could come up with a mechanism where we could distinguish that, I would be fully supportive of it. I just can't think of what that is.
No, I know. And the only thing that I would add is that if somebody has to go to the trouble of going to the town hall to get one of these stickers or permission slip or whatever, that in itself is already going to drive a level of compliance, right? As opposed to, I think, Matt, I heard you say, well, somebody's going to call and say, hey, license plate ending and whatever, they're bringing my deceased mother's stuff over to the dump or whatever. I think that if somebody has to take that step to go to the town hall, write down the address that you know, somebody has a clipboard at town hall, writes down the address, issues the sticker. And again,
But Jeffrey, you've heard that they said it's it's a operational complexity, and you're trying to say it's simple.
I don't think it's an operational complexity. What I heard is it's a compliance concern.
Well,
Because-
it's that you'd be kind of amazed at the little hoops that people will go through to try and, like, you know, we work with a lot of cleanouts where the children are in town for the parents. A lot of times they fly in on a Saturday to clean out that parent's house. Town hall's not open on a Saturday. Now I'm fighting a kid who's just lost their parents, and I'm telling them they can't dump because they don't have the slip from town hall. And I'm dealing with somebody who's grieving with their parents. They have 2 days in from North Carolina to clean out the house. I'm not exaggerating that this stuff
Okay.
happens all the
So-
time.
Yeah, how much more would they be paying for that cleanup?
Proposals, can we get to the proposals?
I understand what you're saying though about like really working with residents to provide a trash rate for the residents. I really feel that and I agree with it. If I could think of a way to apply that honestly and fairly, I would have that in a proposal. I don't think you can do it. I really don't.
Could we do something where it says if they have a town sticker for residential trash and they give that number to the hauler, then they get a discount for the first 2 tons of the truck. And then anything above that is at the commercial rate of 200 or whatever the rate is.
You know where the first 2 tons is because you don't know what that truck is coming in at, and now you're kind of splitting loads.
No, so what I'm saying is if the truck comes in at 2 tons or less, it gets charged at the lower rate. And if it gets 2 tons, or if it's more than 2 tons, the first 2 tons is at 180, and everything above that is charged at
We
220.
have to look at the limitations of our software to see if it can tier it out that way.
And then there was also, when I started, there were so many people who were residents who hauled every day. And it took us a long time to get these residents who were commercial entities to apply for commercial stickers. And it was contentious and difficult. And now that we have all of these people who are residents, but also contractors as commercial entities, separating that relationship between residential and commercial trash took a long time. And it was a concerted effort over like 2 to 3 years to get that separate. I think like that muddy middle area, people always want that lower rate. They're always gonna be after the guy at the scale, telling them why they need to be applied at a different rate. You're opening a window of argument for every transaction, and these guys who work the scale are really gonna be under the gun. You'd be stunned at what people will argue over, like a $10, you're talking like, maybe $20, $30, and people will argue with you so much, and I think you're really placing a significant burden on the staff there. I personally could probably do it, but it'll wear me down like a pencil nub.
And I know we're not gonna,
They're not easy to deal with.
yeah, we're not gonna solve this tonight, but again, on the creative end of the equation, if it's a weekend haul, it has a completely different rate, because I guarantee you that whoever's picking up that deceased parent's stuff, to have people working on a Saturday or on a Sunday is charging a surplus. A surcharge that, like, again, is it gonna be transparent to those two children that have the grieving parent that don't even know that the rate's
Can we move on? I've been asking to. have-
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
should, move
Sorry.
on.
Okay,
I wanna have a point of clarity before we talk about any proposals. All the proposals that we came prepared to discuss today had the rate going up to 180 and 200 effective. That was the first jump. So if we want to tier up to 180, I would like time to redo the proposals and come back.
I think that's too big an increase personally for one jump to 180, at least for the internal ones. Maybe
Can we hear the-
for the external, I think it's probably fine, but for the internal, I think it's too big a jump.
So if I might interject, one thing about phasing in that we
can
want
you
to.
introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, Shane Mark, Assistant Director for Public Works. One thing about phasing it in, like your suggestion, Wells, is we need to be mindful that the Wheelabrator contract is up in 4 years.
Right,
So if we use a phased approach to get at whatever that target rate is. For example, if that target rate was 250, and we phase that over 4 years, by the time we got there, we're into a new contract with Wheelabrator, which we know we're projecting the rates are gonna go significantly up. So if you are proposing to phase it up to that target rate, you need to be mindful of that. Because to do it in little increments, by the time you get there, you're already into a new contract with much higher rates. So
Is
you're
it
gonna be-
accurate that the internal tonnage is a lot less, the internal, like, local tonnage is a lot less than the external and cleanouts?
So I think, well, what we're thinking of, and that's what I think Cecilia was alluding to, is that if you're looking at if you're saying. I'm getting some consensus that the internal rate is too high. I'm getting mixed consensus about the external rate being too high or too low. If you want us to look at various scenarios, I would like to grab that data, and we can do that after this and look at the different mixes of data, the different mixes of revenue, and help provide you some more context for that. We could do that in the next couple of weeks.
I think the reason I'm asking that question is because we could go to the full 200 for the external next year. And that might actually be the majority of the revenue. And then we could phase the internal in more slowly.
We can certainly look at that as a scenario to build out.
Yeah, we have the four.
There are two.
Again,
I'm gonna insist, I'd like to hear the proposals before we, if you
So
didn't get to work some numbers.
I apologize, we've given you the proposal. The proposal is 180 and 200.
Right,
That's the proposal.
Exactly. We already got the proposal.
The proposal is, do we phase it up by 10%? Do we phase it up by an index?
180 and 200, so it'd be 180 and
For the
24,
upcoming
it'd be 190 and 25, it would be 200, so it's only going up. On our end, we had no proposal that included phasing up to the 180 or the 200.
Can I just get one additional data point, and we're not gonna have this today. I would love to see what other towns did relative to their increases. How quickly, what was the rate of their increases over time? Because, and this isn't gonna be a popular comment, but I feel like we probably have been behind the 8 ball and probably really screwed the pooch on this one, pardon the French.
We know that, we admitted that right from the
Yeah,
start,
so-
now we're trying to correct that, so.
Let's see what other towns have done.
Vote on
How
it.
quickly have they raised?
We gotta vote on rate increases, our recommendations soon. Now, we're also talking about, you know, this tiered method, implementing that. Soon, not July of 2024, right?
No, our hope was, I think, to have it implemented, originally it was the fall, so.
September 1st.
Or January.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, if we delay rate increases now, it's gonna likely just lead to. So, I mean, a tiered increase to 180 is just gonna probably create a bigger jump later. So after a bunch of increases and people are gonna see increases over the next 4 years to 180, then there'll be the big jump after 4 years of increases or 3 years of increases. I think what we're hoping to do is the 180, 200 was realistically an alignment to current levels. Because we're gonna look at increases going forward. So our proposal, like Cecilia has said, starts at 180 and 200. And goes up from there to meet what we expect to happen in 2028.
It's just
Okay.
that based on the feedback from the select board on the 200 increase, you know, bringing it down by $20 and it's still going up by 40, it just doesn't feel like we went very far compared to what they were saying.
The select board was against the rate increases. I think that they just wanted to get a little more discussion. I think there are people in town who think this is realistic. Obviously, there's a set of emails that the select board received. And I think they by due diligence, they have to look at this feedback, but I'm not sure that represents everybody in the community. I mean.
Well, now, you have to also think about the constituents that are not being represented here in this discussion. You know, is the people who, you know, don't participate with private haulers and do all of the effort to bring their stuff to the transfer station themselves, and then, and they're paying in taxes, so, and they're subsidizing the, you know, the people who use private haulers. All right, so.
They're
and
more
I-
than subsidizing it when you add in the time that they're dedicating to do the right thing, well, to go through that process.
All right, I think that,
Mr. Chair, if I can recommend a couple of things, we want to talk about the mattress recycling cost as well, and a couple other updates. But we've taken a lot of feedback from the members, and we'll come back with a couple of contacts, which we'll have prior to the meeting, which we'll schedule for sometime in October, in order to have a recommendation to the select board for November.
for November. Okay, I think that, your proposals, I heard you talking about the tiering it up to, up as far as, to 2028. Right, and, man, at this point, I mean, we're gonna be talking about this next spring, right, about increases, okay? And I think given how we're having to catch up, having missed the ball on that, there's a lot of information and a lot of discussion. And maybe we should reserve some of those long-term planning until we get, you know, and doing it in a more planful way, because now we're doing, you know, sort of emergent patching, something, right? So knowing that with whatever increases that we approve for implementation right now for November, right? We're gonna be discussing further increases in the spring for implementation in July. for those who think that, you know, that we're too low at 200 and they want to immediately go up to 240 or 220, well, we're only talking 8 months, you know, from now to do that. So I don't know if that helps people, you know, sort of live with what we're just proposing right now for getting up, you know, getting increased right away. All right,
So does it make sense for us to just look at those two phases? So look at something that we would like to implement in December, January timeframe, and then something we would like to implement next summer?
yes.
And just look at those two, and then we can look at future years when we have more information about what our Wheelabrator contract looks like, or what our waste management moving forward looks like.
And given the fact that we're gonna be discussing this annually,
Yeah.
I think that, I think trying to bite off too much right now only complex, you know, makes it much more complex. And I think we try to simplify this, you know, respond to, the selectmen's request to get something, to them, quickly. And then, you know, we know where the discussion will start when the springtime comes. Right, and we'll learn from this process because we're gonna talk about, you know, if a fee increase here on the next agenda item, so, I think we can, learn from that as we talk about that process.
I would like to make the following suggestion. If we want to respond to these emails and make it sort of a softer landing, I would suggest that what we do is 160, 180 right now as soon as possible, and then 200, 180 next June. And then after that, conditions can change and so forth, and we worry about the other stuff later. If we don't want to respond, if we don't think these emails are of any significance, we ought to just go with what we thought was right before, which was 200, 200, 180, and just go to that immediately.
Well, it was put on the table that we would table this discussion and come back in 2 weeks. Or 3 weeks.
Well, I didn't know that that was a suggestion. I'm making I mean, this is what I just said is a voting, something to vote on.
Okay, if you're making a motion, you're making a motion,
You didn't make a motion.
you're making a motion, you know, and then we need a second and we can vote on that. If that's, you know, that's sort of the rules of any, if you wanna.
Right, but I suggested a sort of alternative here. I don't know what the sense of the committee is with respect to whether they would rather go directly to
Do people wanna vote?
200, 180, or do they want to do it more softly, like 180?
Let me ask a question. Do people want to, sort of table the discussion and come up with other proposals that we'll meet on, or do people want to hear a proposal and vote on something tonight?
I personally would be willing to say something, because we're talking about next year to do a larger increase, but I would personally be willing to say pretty much immediately, let's go up $20. So at least we get started on something and then we can talk about the next one. So I would be willing to discuss that.
I would be in favor of tabling the discussion and hearing the proposals once the staff has more opportunity to look at the real numbers and come back with recommendations of what they would suggest. And I would hate to rush into a vote tonight just for the sake of coming to a decision, because we have to come to a decision.
I would agree with, I agree with you. Yeah, Jeffrey? What's your opinion?
And I'm fine with that, by the way. I'm fine with that too.
Thank you all. Jeffrey, are you here?
So, Mr. Chair, we heard all the comments and
Okay.
there were a lot of thoughtful things that we're gonna take into consideration,
Does-
that's what we're gonna come back.
David, I get the impression that there's not, gonna be a second for your motion. So I think the next thing.
Is there a second?
Not for me.
Can evaluate that as part of our analysis, so we will
Is there a
definitely put
second?
that as one of our scenarios.
Okay,
No.
So
Somebody was agreeing with me.
So do we have a motion on the table right now to table discussion till we have alternative proposals at a future meeting?
do we need that?
I think, Mr. Connor just made the motion, he needs a second.
Second,
Okay, so all in favor of, well, so we need to pick a date.
We'll do that at the end of the
Okay.
agenda.
All right, so is there any discussion in regards to coming back to a number of proposals that I think the DPW is gonna put before us? And not voting on anything tonight.
The only just one point, I just hope the town considers, in my opinion, I think jumping to 180 is too high all in one option. So I hope they come back with some options that offer a tiered approach up to the 180 amount over time.
There were a lot of thoughtful comments, we're gonna be incorporating them in what we come back with.
Okay, so, all right, hearing no discussion, I'll put it to a vote for, discussing all the, voting on the proposals,
Motion to table, Mr. Chairman, that's what you have on the floor.
right?
You have a motion to table.
Yeah, okay, motion to table, good.
So you need a second.
Second.
By Mr. Heller. By Mr., I'm sorry.
So all in all in favor of the motion to table?
Second?
Jeffrey Heller, tree.
Wells did.
Oh, well said. Okay. So, all in favor of
Aye.
tabling?
aye.
It was unanimous.
Mr. Chair, the
Yeah,
superintendent.
Jeff's on mute. He may not be around. He may have had to step away.
Sorry.
Mr. Chair, the superintendent has information to share with the committee relative to recycling costs.
So, just, the mattress recycling. Again, dealing with the impacts of commercial haulers and being unable to track where material is coming from, I propose that for commercial mattresses, we raise the fee to $40. It's currently 20 for residents. And we're seeing an inordinate amount of mattresses come to our facility again, I believe, because we have a low cost. When somebody picks up a load in another community, it's ending up at Needham, with a lot of impact on that. We're not really set up to manage as many mattresses that come through there, so I think 40 is a reasonable adjustment to deal with, for commercial entities.
Do we have any idea what other communities charge for mattresses? For a price point comparison?
I think some communities will do, they'll outsource it to other, entities. I think Newton is at 40 a mattress. Other communities are higher. Sometimes the DPW will pick it up, but it has to be in a bag and, the rates can go up to $60, $50. If you want, we can incorporate this into next meetings. I can get you a rate structure for other communities. 20 is low. We pay 16 per unit for processing. We transport them over the road to Lawrence, so there's a significant amount of fuel used for that. And we also, sometimes because of our staffing shortages, sometimes we have to do it on overtime, which is an unfavorable rate for the cost. We just see these haulers coming in with like 3-4 mattresses and they'll come in with 3 or 4 mattresses 3 times a day, and it's not reasonable to think that's just from Needham. We're just processing too many of them.
Yeah. I just wanted to understand if we're in the same situation where we're the lowest price
Yes.
around and we're
It's-
becoming the dumping of the area.
Yeah, nobody wants to handle them. They're difficult to handle. Usually they get dirty in transportation. And then when they load the container, they do a poor job loading it. So our staff has to unload the container and reload it in an efficient way so that we can get a compact load and get the right number of mattresses over the road. So we're not just sending a container that's jumbled and half full. So I think it's reasonable to put some of that cost onto the commercial haulers.
I would suggest that doubling the price, it just looks bad. And
Okay. It's only
We should go-
it's only for commercial haulers. They're charging generally like $70, $80, $100 to remove
And
mattresses
for-
from houses. Like if you had someone remove one from your house, they'd probably,
for residents, it's different.
residents, we charge 20.
So this is only increasing the commercial, residents could still get rid of one mattress, I mean.
Yep.
We just increased the cost of mattresses a year or two ago, and right?
I don't think so.
We had a grant, and not a year
We
or
had a
two ago,
grant.
but several years ago, we had a grant for processing mattresses, and I think we had a nominal fee associated with that. But that grant has gone away.
Well,
Right, we voted to cover, we voted to cover the cost,
right,
to increase it to cover our costs.
so
So, and you're saying it's $15
is
plus
what they-
transportation, so we still are not covering the costs, even with the $20 for the town. And $40 would only affect the commercial haulers who are again taking advantage of a residential rate for their commercial and, advantage.
Why don't I come back with the numbers of commercial mattresses that come in and then we can discuss it in conjunction with the other rate increase.
Do people feel like they need that information before they vote on this, or they feel like they have enough information to vote on the mattress increase? Commercially,
I feel I have enough information to vote on it tonight. If we
Me too.
vote.
Yep, me too.
I do as well. David, do you?
Okay,
So,
Make
Any
a
question-
motion, we accept the recommendation to increase the commercial rate for mattresses from $20 to $40 and leaving the residential rate at $20.
Second.
okay, any discussion? Hearing none, ask for a vote. All in favor?
aye.
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 Aye. So it's unanimous. So that's a recommendation that will be included in,
When we go before the books, select board in November. Matt, do you have a general update?
General update, yeah, I'll get through this kind of quick just because it's been a long night. So Casella update, just for our pricing. We're looking at increases in cardboard, which is good. The rate has gone from about 20 per ton to close to 40 per ton as a revenue source for cardboard. So that's trending in the right direction. Paper sorting costs have dropped from $15-16 a ton to about $6 a ton, so that's trending in the right direction. The cost of bottles and cans, mixed plastic has gone up, but only relatively small change. It's still around 75 a ton for processing rate, and single stream is actually lower than commingled because they can get the paper and the cardboard out of that stream. So single stream is currently down 74, and that's a slight decrease. So we're still paying for our recycling, but the paper and cardboard end of it is looking good, and those are strong for us. So that's a good trend. Compost loads are going out steadily. We have a good partner in Reed Custom Soils. We've sent out about 1,200 yards since the beginning of the fiscal year, since July. That creates space for obviously the fall leaves. It also creates space if we need that area for snow operations. So that's been a very good friend for us. Reed Custom Soil is a good partner so far, and we're probably gonna look at seeing if we can enter into some kind of partnership where the pricing maybe is a little better and we deal with them exclusively. We did have a very, very heavy August after the floods. Our tonnage was over 1,000 tons per month. Typically, we're in the range of about 700 tons, 700 tons. So this was like a record-setting tonnage. It involved a massive amount of clean out, but also the cleanouts were very wet. So just interesting to see how you know these weather events affect us and affects our costs, because that kind of throws that purchase order for the yearly disposal of trash. It throws that a little out of whack. We're gonna have to keep a close eye on that as we get further into the fiscal year. We overspent that by, not overspent it, but it was over by a significant amount in that month. And so we'll watch that as we get into
Does
like
that
April.
wetness hurt your operations?
You know what, there have been times when the incinerator actually needs to introduce fuel into the loads in order to get the combustion. And that last time I remember that happened, it was in 2015 when we had all the snow and the loads were going out so wet, they couldn't get them to combust in the chambers of the incinerator. So they actually had to spray them with a little bit of probably diesel fuel or some kind of fuel. So I would imagine that, yeah, that was probably an issue, that you know, affected Wheelabrator. I don't,
But it doesn't affect you directly.
no, just that the cost was wet and we're paying water weight. I mean, we're paying. The disposal rate's affected by the weight, and obviously wet material is gonna weigh a lot more. Food waste has started up at all schools, including Newman, although they haven't participated in the cafeteria yet. It's out of the kitchen. But we're getting collections at all of the schools. There's a new nutrition services director at the schools. I've met with her and her assistant. She's supportive of the program. Just kind of due to our staffing situation, I haven't been at the schools yet this year, so I can't really report directly. And just our staffing updates, we're looking to hire a heavy equipment operator and one laborer. We've had some good interviews, but those candidates chose other divisions within the town.
How's the food program on site doing?
It's doing okay. I'd like to expand it. I haven't had a lot of time to devote, but I think we could do better. I think we could expand it. You know, I'd like to get that tonnage up. We're around 10 tons a month, and I think we could do better. So I don't know if that involves creating different locations for people to drop. I have to identify that. Just in terms of staffing, one of our members, the assistant superintendent, you met Justin McGregor, is enrolled in a leadership program through the Mass Municipal Association, part of like getting towards a master's in leadership and municipal. It's a pretty significant program. It's every Friday, he'll be offsite at the class, but you know, it was something he had to apply for, he was enrolled in, and I really think, you know, he's like one of those people who will be an asset for the town for years to come. So this is an investment in our staff. And then we have another, the scale specialist is doing CDL training throughout the division. So we're kind of proud of that because, you know, we've got a facility where we can train hands-on driving, and we can also teach safety. We can teach, you know, the mechanics of it, and that's our scale specialist. So we're involved in the rest of DPW, and you know, it takes a lot of adjustment for us to get our operations done with a lot of moving parts, but I think things are going well there, and I value any feedback from you guys if you have any thoughts or suggestions, anything you see. That's about what I have.
Mr. Chair, for scheduling, would Tuesday, October 17th work for the members?
That's for me.
Yeah, me too. I read your lips, Bill. He said works for
Sorry,
me too.
it works for me as well.
Not the Zoom session, if you get the, be able to read people's lips.
Good.
David.
Okay, October 17th, 6:30, here.
Every year.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. Thank you all. Thank you for the lively discussion and the expertise. And see you.
Thanks, everybody.